Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Tech Classes. This video is the part 3 of the Pandas tutorial and it is a part of the data analysis using Python playlist. In the first and second part, we have seen how we can create series and the data frame and how we can perform different basic functionalities after loading the dataset into the notebook. And the dataset that we have seen is in the form of Excel file and the CSV file. Now in this video, we will see after loading the dataset, if we want to see some particular columns and rows, then how we can select them from the dataset. So let's use the CSV file that we have used in the previous tutorial. So for loading the CSV file, we have to use this function read CSV and then pass the name of the file or path of the file. This is the CSV file. I will just copy this and paste it here. Now this CSV file, if you remember, if you have seen the previous video, then it contains 47 unwanted rows. So we have to skip those rows because after 48th rows, the original data starts. This is the data frame. This is the data frame and you can see these are the rows and the number of columns. You can also check using the shape and you can also check using the columns function. So these some basic functions we have seen in the previous video. Now let's see, if you see here, there are 9 columns. But what if you have a multiple columns like around 20 columns or 23 columns? Because in real time, it is not dependent. It can be of variable types. For example, the columns can be 100 and rows can be like 2 lakh, 3 lakh, 4 lakh, like that. This is just a small data set that I am using to show how you can select particular rows and columns from the data set. So let's see, if you want to select only one row, only one column at a time, then you can use the indexing bracket. So for indexing bracket, we use the square bracket. This is the square bracket. Now in this, you can pass the column name. So whatever column name you want to see, for example, I want to see this average column only. Not all the data set, not all the columns. I just want to check only the average column. So this statement will return only the average column. So you can compare the values here also. So that is how you can select any one column at a time. For example, let's take the another column like this. But what if you want to check multiple columns? For example, more than 2. So just see, if I want to select year, decimal and the average column, then how we can do so? You have to use the double square bracket. Now the first square bracket is for the selection and the second square bracket is for the list of the columns that you want to return. So in the list of the columns, you can pass any number of columns. So for example, I want to see year and then end days and then average. So you can see only year, end days and the average column is returned from the total 9 columns. So that is how you can select multiple columns at a time. That is how you can select one column or more than one column at a time. Now let's see how we can select any rows from the dataset. Suppose you want to see only particular rows from the dataset, then how you can do so? So have you heard about the loc and the iloc method? So loc method is something that is related to the label name and iloc method is for the indexing. So these two methods are used also for the selection. Loc and the iloc method. Loc and iloc method. So here if you see, loc is for location. You can pass the location of the data set. Now here you can pass the label name for the loc. But if you see here, there is I additional with the loc. I is for indexing. So in place of the label name, and label name is for the index name. In place of the index name, index name, you can pass the index of the row to select. Like if I want to select, suppose df.iloc, and I want to select from 10th row to 20th row. So I will use 10 and then 20. Now this is the slicing operator. If you have read about the list, then you have seen how we can use the indexing, how we can use the slicing in the list. Similarly, we will use the slicing here also in the iloc. If I run this, then you can see from the 10 to 19, that is 20 minus 1 will be 19, row is getting printed here. It returns the rows from 10th index to 20, and we have used the iloc method. You can also use any other number. For example, suppose 2000 to the last. Now you can see from 2000 to the last there are 494 rows, and it is returned by this statement. What if you want to select a particular row and particular column at a time? Instead of returning all these 9 columns, suppose you want to return only some particular column, then you can use df.iloc and then 10 to 25, let's suppose, then comma. After comma, you can pass the index of the columns, not the name of the columns. iloc is only for the indexing. So you have to pass the index for the rows also and index for the columns also. So the column index will start from 0, 1, 2 like that. So let's suppose I just want to see the month column. So its index will be 1. So you can see from 10 to 24 we are getting rows for only the month column. Now let's suppose if you want to select multiple columns and multiple rows at a time, then what you can do is, if you want to select like the continuous column, for example month to day and then decimal, these are continued columns, so you can use the slicing also here. Let's suppose I will use 4 here. So 1 is at month, second index for the day, and the third index is for the decimal. So you get the 3 columns and the selected rows. So for selected rows, you only get the 3 columns as you have passed in this statement. That is how you can select a number of columns and the rows based on the dataset and also the requirements. If you want to see a particular form of the data, then you can just use the selection and then see what the data contains. What if you want to return non-continuous column? Then you can pass the columns in the list. For example, you can pass the index of the columns in the list. So let's see 2, 5, and then 1, and then 6. It will return day and then end days and then month. Now month is at 1, so you can see month is returned after end days. Here is the end days, and then after that is 1 year ago. So that is how you can select the non-continuous column also. Now let's see how we can use the loc method. Now loc method is only useful, like most of the time we use iloc method, but loc method is only useful when you have name at the index. For example, if I just set the index, let's suppose we have to set the column day as the index. So we can use the function set index. This is a function to set the index. Similarly, you can pass the name of the column and then it will set the index. You can see now the index is the day column, and here from the values from the data set, the day column is removed and we have only 8 columns, and earlier we have 9 columns. So set index day. If you want to make the changes in the original data frame, you have to every time pass this parameter in place equals to true. So this will make the changes in the original data frame. So if I run this, then it will return nothing. But if you check the original data frame, then you have changed the index to the day column. So this is the function. Just remember, this is the function to set the index. Now you can use the loc method. Same square bracket, and then you have to pass the name of the index. So here the index will be, let's suppose I want to see the data from the 30 day of every year and every month. Now you can see we get the data for every month and year, all the data set, and it has 75 rows. So from the data set, there are only 75 rows from the 30 days. If you want to change, for example, if you want to see another date, then you can use, let's suppose 16 or 15. So there are 82 rows from the 16 days. That is how you can use the loc method. And in this, you can also pass the name of the index like this. In iloc, we have to pass the index of the row as well as the index of the column. But in loc method, you have to pass the name of the column as well as the name of the index. That is all for the loc method and the iloc method. Thank you.